that I really thought that when people knew right, they do right.
Yeah, I fell prey to this one for a long time. Hi, my name is Beck. I've got 2 law degrees and I specialize in conflict management. And I gotta say, law school didn't help with this delusion because I was surrounded by people that, when presented with facts or evidence, would actually change their positions. That's what judges are supposed to do. So you have an issue, you show up to the courtroom, you present them with the facts and evidence, you show them clearly that the law is on your side, and they go, oh, yes, okay, I can't really argue with that. The law is on your side. You win. At least that's how it's supposed to work. So I actually didn't have this whole just world bubble popped until after I went into conflict management. I started to study the neuroscience of conflict and how, people will act against their own best interests and they'll act against fact, and they'll act against wisdom or sense, simply because their brains are flooding them with chemicals that are telling them to. It's like a drug. It acts the same way. So whether you're right or wrong, when someone contradicts a um, a statement or a belief or some kind of principle that you've articulated that you hold deeply enough, and it doesn't really even need to be that deep. It can just be, it can actually be pretty surface level. Your brain prepares you for the fight that is coming. When you feel contradicted in some way, your brain prepares your body for a fight that's coming because we've been running from lions a lot longer than we've been paying bills. So our brain senses intellectual threat the same way that it senses physical threat. So it engages those responses that get us ready for a fight, perhaps even a fight for our lives. And we get flooded with all of these chemicals, these feel-good chemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine, because, our bodies want us to, participate in the animated contest for living. And so when we get all of these chemicals, we suddenly feel right. We feel more right than we did even before we contradicted what the other person said. And because we feel right, and so many of us are more concerned about spiritual states or state of our feelings than we are about the actual truth, we dig in and fight anyway. And there are a lot of ways that we can get over this. And, I have done hours long lectures on ways to get over this. But in this particular situation, I'm going to focus on like one little way. We have to be more concerned with the truth than we are with being right. We can't just let our feelings about a subject dictate what we believe about it. And this is a big ask. I mean, Aristotle himself said that it's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And in that vein, I'm going to switch tracks for a second. We really need to remember that we're not necessarily, and we're very unlikely to be arguing with people who have the same intellectual capacity that we do. If you honestly assess yourself to be above average intelligence, that means you're above the average. That means most people are dumber than you. And it takes a certain amount of intelligence and self-awareness to be able to go, you know what? I hold a belief about this. But instead of fighting about it, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to collect this data and I'm going to hear this person out. And I'm going to listen to what they're saying and actually go back and assess my beliefs on something and see if they're actually like factually true or if they're harm reductionist, etc. Most people are not capable of doing that. They're either just not smart enough or they're not cognitively developed enough or they really just don't care. And when you're dealing with somebody in one of those situations where like they're just not smart enough, they're not cognitively developed enough, or they just don't care, there's nothing that you can do at that point. You can present them with all the facts. You can present them with unassailable truth, and they will still not be able to self-assess well enough to change their positions. And as a conflict manager, I hate to say this, but also as a conflict manager, I also help people with their boundaries and I help people reserve their energy for the things that are really important. And I gotta tell you that arguing with people like this is a waste of time. You are going to try to persuade them with facts. You are going to try to persuade them with even unassailable truths. And no, facts are not how they form their opinions. We need to accept that facts are not how they form their opinions. They form their opinions by doing what they've always been told or doing what feels right. And usually, remember, we get rewarded with feel-good chemicals when we fight with other people. So the thing that feels rightest is probably the thing that's the most wrong. That's why you deal with people who troll. You deal with people who are proudly hateful. Because when they're proudly hateful, their bodies register the resistance to that as threat. And then it floods them with all of these feel-good chemicals and they feel right about it. It's so funny that all of these like racists and bigots and folks are always coming at people like me, like liberals and feminists, and trying to say that we're ruled by our feelings. And it's actually quite the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. Whereas, I'm very ruled by evidence and facts. And if you can make a good argument to me, backing it up with facts that can be tested and repeated, then I'm more than happy to change my view, because I would rather be on the side of truth than stick to something that's wrong. Whereas a lot of the folks that the OP is referring to are people who are sticking to what they stick to because it feels right, because it's potentially an unpopular view that causes people to resist them, and that resistance floods them with feel-good chemicals and makes them feel righteous about it. And then let's not even start talking about in-group cult psychology that comes with being religious, or in heavy movements like MAGA that have a singular, unassailable cult leader and a whole set of rules about who gets to be in and who gets to be out, and all of the psychology that they use to cause, a sense of danger when you are not conforming. But that's another video for another day. But just remember, guard your peace. When people are coming at you and they're demanding explanations for things, you need to ask yourself if that person, even if presented with unassailable fact, if they're willing at that point to assess their viewpoints, because most people aren't. Even if you presented them with a mountain of evidence, most of them are either not capable of self-assessing or not willing to self-assess. And if they're not capable or they're not willing to self-assess, you're wasting your time. You're just wasting your effort. Literally, I had a guy come to me on my YouTube channel and like make all of these demands of things that he demanded that I explain all these things. And I was like, or I could just not do that. I mean, really, it would have been a waste of time. I'm not here to be his rage bait entertainment. If he wants to go educate himself, he absolutely can. The internet exists for us all. And inevitably what will happen is, because you will not provide the free labor to educate that person, specifically the ways that they are demanding that you, a stranger, will educate them, they're going to go, well, if you could have told me, you would have told me. And they're still going to hold on to what they believed in the first place. And guess what? Look, same result, less effort from you. People have to take responsibility for their own education. I did. You did, OP. And a refusal to be educated, or a vilification of education? Ooh, boy. Not somebody you could have won over with facts in the first place. So save your energy. They're on drugs. And stay safe out there. Keep fighting the good fight when the effort's worth it.